Hey all you toadrific beasts and amazing creatures! It's time for another McCroaks Late-Night Show with me, Toad McCroaks. Tonight we're missing J.Gray, and we're also missing the tortoise, Carl himself. He must have got lost in the parking lot again, I'm not sure, or he stayed up too late watching cartoons. You know, he might have stayed up way too late watching the platform that our next guest has started. So without any further delay, let's go ahead and start the show and get talking with Tony. It's just me and him today. Tony, it's so great to have you on the show. I really appreciate you coming in and spending your time with us tonight. I'm super grateful that you're here. Thank you for coming.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you.
So Tony, you started RAD. Would you like to tell us a little bit about RAD, please?
Yeah. So, maybe I'll give a little bit of a brief history and then how we got here, and that helps provide a little bit of context, because I think ultimately what a lot is going to happen in this space is that a lot of value creation will be at the intersection of bringing Web 2 companies into Web 3 and getting industries built on Web 2 comfortable with Web 3. And so media obviously is a big part of that, but we've always kind of sat at that intersection of technology and media and pushing the boundaries in terms of what is next in this space. And we started and launched a 360-degree video virtual reality streaming network initially, and we're the kind of largest global aggregator of immersive content. We had content on the platform like from Disney and Fox, NBC, ABC, all the major kind of broadcasters and movie studios, and they trusted us with that content, which is, those deals are very difficult to get. That trust is hard to build, and we were a consumer-facing application sitting in front of the consumer, and a lot of these studios didn't have the knowledge or intention to build a platform themselves, so they just needed a distribution partner. And that was us. On the hardware side of that, we had companies like Oculus and Google and Sony all coming to us with their hardware devices and saying, hey, we need content on our VR platforms at launch. Can you guys collect all of that content and bring it to us? And so we established that trust on the hardware devices as well, which is a really valuable intersection. We sat kind of delivering content to the consumers. The content was coming from major studios and broadcasters. We were delivering that to flagship devices. Of course, VR took its time. It's still continuing to take its time. We're excited about it, but from a distribution perspective and a content creation perspective, it's just not quite there in terms of mass market adoption. And it may be another 5 to 10 years even. It's coming, but it's just taking its time. So we started to look at other opportunities in content and what we could do with kind of the next, what was coming next in like 2017, and looked at smart contracts as a way to build a content platform for paying out creators faster and rewarding users for participating in the system. And so we actually built a decentralized content marketplace starting kind of the end of 2017, early 2018, called Aura. And that was literally, it still exists today. You can go to aura.one, the website, and it has a file manager that you can download. We're in the process of running some updates on it right now, but essentially that was designed to be a decentralized, it could be decentralized Steam. You could sell whole games on there. You can sell albums. You can sell PDFs. It's really kind of full content agnostic, decentralized store, essentially built on Ethereum. And we started to bring that to a lot of our content partners like Disney and Fox and NBC, and they loved it, but we're just not quite there yet. Most of them didn't even have streaming platforms. Disney Plus didn't exist. Paramount Plus, HBO Max, like none of those existed in 2017, 2018. So, we were just seeing the future, and we're probably a little bit early. And of course, crypto winter started, and we hit some headwinds and whatnot. So, um, we just had to be a little bit patient. And I think we may have been a little too patient. Probably should have continued to push, kind of regardless of the headwinds. But the funny thing about timing is, if you're too early, it's the same thing as being wrong. And so, I think we were still excited about it. We just had to kind of wait for timing to be better. And so, of course, we started supporting traditional video content, expanding out of VR onto flagship devices. So, we went from the PlayStation VR to the PlayStation 4 to being a launch partner on the PlayStation 5. We went from Google Daydream to Android TVs. We still have a Quest app that's out there on Meta. We have an iPhone app, etc. And so, supporting traditional video is fairly easy, but it's not a differentiator. The waters are bloody for streaming platforms out there. So, we still had to have that differentiator. And then ultimately we have a bunch of these studios started coming back to us kind of to end of 2020, 2021 and saying, hey, you were telling us about content on the blockchain in 2017, 2018. We believe you now. How can we start to work with you to launch NFTs tied to movie IP or shows, or minting video as NFTs in their own right, or gating content behind NFT collections? And so we essentially dusted off some of the original work we did with Aura, and took the streaming platform that we built with Rad and started to merge those things into a single product. That means that we have a global distribution footprint with apps on major devices, major streaming devices, and giving creators the ability to mint directly on the platform and or gate content behind NFT collections. It's kind of like Stoner Cats have done, or various other ones. And so the key being is that there's a lot of video that's tied to these NFT projects. And now, especially now, there's a huge wave of kind of Web3 studios that are popping up and launching really great stuff. So the ability to watch that video content, like the Deadheads series, for example, and then simultaneously see which Deadheads are in that show, and even see that collection right by the video, and be able to purchase and trade those NFTs that are in the series or the show itself, is the intersection that has been missing from this space. And so we kind of reposition the platform as the Web3 streaming platform for not only the kind of wave of upcoming Web3 studios, but the existing major studios that already trust us with their content to start bringing their NFTs into the market as well. So that's kind of a little bit of the history, and then how we got to NFTV, essentially Rad becoming a Web3 centric streaming platform. And then going into the end of this year, you'll start to see the ability to mint videos, include video behind gated behind a collection, and distribute that content to smart TVs and game consoles. And we already have all those apps available, so we're just testing all of the minting capabilities and marketplace capabilities kind of in a private beta right now. So anyway, yeah, we're pumped. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, I'm pumped for that too. I'm super bullish on Rad and everything you have going on. So Tony, what were some of the challenges that you faced starting up Rad and focusing on the blockchain and NFTs?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I actually went to school for computer engineering. And so, I actually was writing code for a decade plus, and, I still hack around on little projects here and there. But one of the early things that I started doing as an engineer was writing video transcoders in like low level C. So I was like writing streaming applications in like 2005, 2006 for live video events. And, so I kind of cut my teeth in the media business in video. But over time kind of transitioned into, more of the business and partnerships, and then eventually kind of am more of a CEO now, but with a technical background, and have just seen all of the business opportunities at the intersection of media and tech. And that's why, VR was exciting at the time. I got into Bitcoin in 2012. I read the white paper, and me and a buddy started playing around with a couple of different things like building arbitrage bots, and we built a little Bitcoin casino that we never launched, but it was a couple things that we were playing around with in kind of 2012, 2013 timeframe. And so have always been a big believer in what blockchain can do is just an enabling technology. And smart contracts really unlock that, particularly for content. I mean, I wrote the original white paper for Aura, sitting in my in-laws' house in a dark room, reading other people's white papers and, flipping crypto at the end of 2017. It was a fun time. But we actually wrote our own version of a smart contract that was kind of based on ERC20 in 2017, thinking that like you would sell 1 million copies of the same movie, not that they were like non-fungible. And we built in revenue splits, and the way we built it was a peer-to-peer content delivery network, and the smart contracts would pay 90% of the revenue directly to the creator and 10% of the revenue to the peers hosting and delivering the content. So we built a reward system in parallel with a royalty system in our own custom smart contract, kind of pre ERC 721 or 1155 standards whatsoever. And so, in that moment we said, well, we have a centralized content platform, and we have the opportunity to build this kind of into this new paradigm, which to some degree disrupts our own business. If you build the utopian version of a decentralized content marketplace, you lose the black box of 70%, 30% revenue split. Now all of a sudden, it's a lot of that work is taken over by the chain. So from an accounting and a legal perspective, right? So, and even if you use a peer-to-peer network, you're not hosting anything. So to some degree, we saw that as an enormous opportunity and had to make that decision. Do we disrupt our own business potentially to build for this future? And that really drove the kind of transition into a Web3 centric business. It was, the speed to market. We had, our lawyers were telling us not to do it, and our investors were telling us not to do it, and everybody was scared that the SEC was going to bring the hammer down on everybody. And it was just, and then crypto winter started to set in, and it was like everybody was nervous, and we just hit those headwinds. So, but like philosophically, deeply believed in that future, and we still do, and are now essentially productizing all of those layers that we had in the past and bringing that into what has been a mature platform, with, like I mentioned before, like having a PlayStation app. Like there's no other company doing anything in crypto that has anything on the PlayStation, and they're not going to get on the PlayStation. Like we know that Sony's like almost impossible to get on as a video application. There's only 20 video apps on the PlayStation. Like Android TVs you can develop for them, but we're already there. And so, there's like a bunch of head starts that we have with a global content delivery network, with a global app footprint, and already working with big name studios, that we can take all of that value and quickly flip it into Web3 value. So, it's not like the we were just a bunch of business guys in a room, and we're like, hey, this NFT stuff is super hot, we should do this. Like, no. I've actually been building in Bitcoin for a decade and been deeply philosophically believing in this tech for years now. And so it wasn't hard for us to make that transition and for everybody to be excited about it. The hardest thing is really just making sure that the market is there, and building a business that has actual fundamentals, not built on like, here's an NFT drop, give me $2 million, and then hope and pray to, that we make it, that we're going to build this whole thing on a couple $1 million. Thankfully, we're not in that position. So, yeah.
Wow, that's totastic. I honestly didn't even know that you had that type of background in coding.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's always funny. I mean, I've seen so many cycles in crypto, and like one of the funniest memes that we always used to joke about, and whenever all the ICO boom was happening, is you just look at a project page and it'd be like 12 business people and then one CTO on the project page, and it was always kind of a meme that there was no real engineers involved, and nobody with a tech background. And I think that's super important for credibility in the space. And we're out there, like there's a lot of these projects that have anon creators, and they're like a derivative project, and like they're out there like promising the world. It gets a ton of buy-in, and then they ghost and rug everybody, and then it's like shocked Pikachu face, like everybody's like, wait a second, why does this keep happening to me? And it's like, well, can you see the founders like on video, like talking about the things that they actually believe in, and go find them on LinkedIn and like see them on Twitter. And so I think that's important from a credibility perspective, to have people who've been in the space really meaningfully working on it. There, nobody on our team's trying to hide. Like I've been on Yahoo, Finance, TV, Bloomberg, and NASDAQ, and stages talking about this stuff. Like, so I think that's really what's going to happen in this next phase. The NFT boom was just like the ICO boom. And what really came out of those two things, or what came out of the ICO boom, is DeFi. That's the real that ended up being like the meaningful financial use case that came out of the ICO boom. And now that you have the NFT boom, and that's starting to die down, just like the ICO boom died down, you're going to have marketplaces emerge that based on utility, and those are going to be real businesses. And that's how we're positioning what we're doing now.
Yeah, so you didn't buy any pizza with that Bitcoin back then, did you?
No, that was not me. That was not me. We just had, I didn't think about it like I better stock up on Bitcoin because the global economy is going to collapse into an apocalypse, and we'll be using Bitcoin as the currency to trade with. I wish I would have been that much of a prepper and accumulated 10,000 Bitcoin, but no, like me and a buddy we were throwing around like a Bitcoin here, a Bitcoin there, like it was no big deal. We were just playing around with like these bots and the gambling thing, and like, so we had like Bitcoins between us. It wasn't like thousands of them, and so it was fun to play with and fun to get a handle on. But even when it was like $20, when I started looking at it, and like a couple hundred when I was accumulating it, and then I even thought at that point, I was like, this is so dumb. It's so expensive. Like, how is this so expensive? It doesn't have any use cases. And so even I was skeptical at the time, to some degree, of like how the value was being generated, beyond just, of course, like, the things like Silk Road and Mount Gox and all that stuff that was happening at the time. That was fun and kind of interesting to watch. But at the end of the day, like, I wasn't like maybe as all in as I should have been. I thought it was like an interesting, novel piece of technology that would have been valuable, and built a couple little test applications. But you know what really got me? Um, I went kind of deep on this thing because I lived in Colorado for a couple years in Denver, and there was a lot of cannabis companies there that had, $2 million in cash sitting in their basement because the banks wouldn't bank them, and it wasn't federally legal yet, or it wasn't legal statewide. Sorry, and so, but it was medically legal, and so I was working with a guy in Denver locally, just about how we could use Bitcoin as a Bitcoin business to take that money in and essentially allow them to like get Bitcoin in return and then liquidate that Bitcoin and then put that money in the bank. So it's not, but it's like, that was money laundering. So, but we actually went pretty deep and never launched the business. But I was like looking at, buying trucks, like armored trucks and like all kinds of stuff. I mean, I went down that rabbit hole. And then when I hit kind of a dead end there, I was like, okay, I even set up an account at a bank in Denver, and like they started grilling me super hard to the point of like I couldn't even get into that business. So anyway, that actually like stopped me in my tracks. I just then left Bitcoin in a wallet and let it sit there until about 2017 when it hit like $8,000. And then I was like, oh, wait a second, something's happening here. So yeah, it's an interesting kind of early journey and exposure to it. But when I saw Bitcoin going ham and like really started to dig into what was happening in smart contracts, that's when we were like, oh, okay, we need to do this for content.
I just love hearing people's stories about how they used to play with Bitcoin, passing it around and stuff.
It was like internet funny money, and
Yeah, it's insane, really, and I imagine that it's gonna, continue to grow, and maybe we'll even see a blockchain economy one day.
Like Starbucks and JetBlue, and there's like real companies starting to get into using blockchain to power their loyalty programs, and it has an expense, it has a cost to it, but you essentially get trusted large scale infrastructure for no work. And so like, why wouldn't you as a business consider that instead of going and launching like, a bunch of cloud servers that have your own database on them? You have to manage your own identities, your own money flowing through the system, and like PCI compliant like storage facilities to store credit cards so they don't get breached. It's like, that just seems like there's so many efficiencies that are gained by this, and it's great to see real businesses starting to adopt it. And I mean, even from a media perspective, if you look at companies like Spotify, for example, their accounting and legal department is massive, and they have paper contracts with all of these different organizations that have revenue splits and windows around content and artists that are attached to those labels. And it's just like all of those agreements have to be honored, and the revenue splits have to be paid out, and the money has to be audited, and that takes 60 to 90 days to get to the label, which then the label has to take 60 to 90 days to get to the artist. And it's just like all of that efficiency is gained immediately, and the trust in the system is finally emerging. And if you look at like on the surface of what everybody's seeing, and they're like, ooh, a Bored Ape is worth $250,000. I don't believe in that. But when you start to talk about kind of like operationally and infrastructurally what you get as a business kind of out of the box, then those types of people start to perk up a little bit. I mean, I was just at Sony last week speaking at an internal panel I was on the panel, like talking about all the different use cases and whatnot for like 50 different executives inside Sony. Everybody from Sony Pictures, Sony Music, Sony Interactive Entertainment, the PlayStation team, etc. And they're like, okay, I'm actually starting to see that there's kind of other bits of value beyond just like, well, let's put out 10,000 Spider-Man NFTs that like we're not conveying any ownership on those NFTs and they're just collector's cards. It's like now they're actually looking at, well, maybe we should split it. And this is not just Sony, this is like all the studios, but like maybe we should create like a little labs studio that starts to experiment with like genuine kind of Web3 IP models and distribution models and royalty payments. And so we're starting to see the emergence of, you know, the real use cases and real adoption. And, you know, the great thing about this versus something like VR is this works on every piece of content in the world today. Whereas like with VR content, you have to recreate the game from scratch or recreate the video from scratch, and then somebody has to wear a VR headset, which is a whole other hurdle. And this is like, oh, wait, I can go to a web browser and click a couple of buttons and then watch a movie. So yeah, pretty exciting times, and good to see the big companies actually adopting. You know.
I firmly believe that the Web 2.5 area is the ideal market right now, and I think you're nailing it.
Well, and it's just like looking at the web too. You know, it's like early web, or you know, early 90s. People were like, "This is clunky and terrible to use," and then kind of late 90s, early 2000s for, you know, really kind of 10 years, like call it 98 to 2008, you had this explosion of use cases on the internet. And that was the transition. That was like 1.5, right? Like that was the original web going into Web 2. And so 1.5 was the birth of YouTube and MySpace and even Facebook. And those were all done coming off the back of the OG web. That was like pre-smartphone era. You know, 2008 is when that really started to tip over. So, you know, smartphones brought a whole different app ecosystem, and that really kind of changed the dynamic of human computer interaction. But that there was a golden era where multiple, you know, trillion-dollar companies, frankly, at least with Facebook and Amazon and Google, really kind of exploded in that moment. And I agree with you 100%. Like we're entering that era right now for Web3. It's not going to go, we're not going to see the full utopian manifestation of Web3 probably for a decade, but in the interim, an enormous amount of value creation is going to happen. And those will become the multi-billion, $100 billion companies over the next 20 years.
So speaking about the next decade, Tony, where do you think you could see RAD in the next decade?
I think this, if you look at this, the distribution model of content, it's been in this weird place of like, the company, like Disney, for example, they own all of their content outright and they rent it to you on a monthly basis. So you don't own anything. You just get access to that content on a monthly basis, and they can put things up, take things down on a whim. They own the IP 100%, and you deal with it as a consumer. We see, if you are flipping that upside down on what people are doing in the Web3 space, they'll launch a collection that you can ultimately buy into. That collection will have IP attached to it. You then, as an owner in that community, have IP ownership of that content, and then ultimately can, in the future, benefit in different ways from owning that. Whether that's you get to watch the content first, as part of a window, or even at some point, I think we'll figure this out, is royalty payments back to NFT holders for economic activity that's happening around that content. That's really kind of the holy grail. But, I think for us, it's thinking about what we can do to honor all the different parts of Web3 content. And that starts with, the IP ownership model. We don't have to own the IP. We're just creating a place that allows people to put that content into the platform, stream it to their communities, and ultimately give more ownership back to the content creators and to their communities. But video streaming is hard, so there's not there's not even a video category on OpenSea at all. And they definitely don't have an app on the PlayStation or an Android TV. So really focusing on that, kind of honoring Web3 from an IP ownership perspective, paying out the creators immediately based on revenue shares and royalties that they are setting themselves, and building out the tools for engaging with the community around that content. Because right now you have, like take Stoner Cats, for example, they created a dedicated Web3 website that they had to build themselves for minting. And then actually the marketplace activity primarily happened on OpenSea separately. They have a Discord channel, which is where communication and chat with the community happens. They had a third-party online video platform power the distribution of the video behind a custom NFT gate that they had to build. And I mean, that's essentially like 5 different services that they had to use and manage to get a simple video online and have it be NFT gated, and then have a marketplace and communication with their fans. We see that as one thing. You should be able to go to a page, watch the video, say, oh, wait a second, there's four of these characters. Here's the actual NFTs for them that are linked to the video. And oh, here's the little holders club tab over here that you can go in and chat to people and who are like part of the holders of the collection. And all of that is able to live in one place, and nobody has to keep building things custom over and over again, which again goes back to that kind of early analogy of the internet. Like, people were building their own presence and their own e-commerce portal and their own email servers, and they were building all of those things themselves. And now companies do that for you. You can go to Squarespace, launch a website, upload videos, and have an email newsletter all powered by Squarespace and not have to do anything. So we're seeing that convergence start to happen now. We're trying to package up a lot of complexity from a Web3 perspective and a streaming perspective, and make that really simple and seamless, similar to what you're used to on kind of more mature, web and mobile apps today. So yeah, and there's some other things that we've played around with custodying, like basically holding wallets for people so they don't have to go create their own wallets and manage them as third-party things. But if you want to export your content, you can. Supporting all different kinds of currencies. Obviously, stable currencies become really important when you're dealing with studios. They don't like volatility. Saying that you're going to accept ETH for something is basically a non-starter for a lot of people selling movies. They want their $20 movie to be $20 at the end of the day, not $15. So there's those kinds of things that we have kind of woven into the roadmap. And I think we're about to drop some great news that pushes the level of the content and the IP that we're working on, that we're working with, that I think is going to be really exciting for the space. So yeah, it's a good roadmap, and we see the opportunity. It's almost like how Netflix took a DVD distribution business and turned it into a streaming business. We see taking like a Web2 streaming business and turning it into a Web3 streaming business. It's a different paradigm of distribution, but you're still taking movies and moving them from one person to another.
So before I let you go, Tony, where can we find more information about RAD? Where can we watch it? Where do our viewers need to go?
Yeah, so rad.live is the domain, just rad.live, rad.live. Our Twitter's pretty active, so if you go to, it's radnftv is the Twitter handle. That our bio on Twitter has links to literally everything. So the Discord and Aura, the blockchain platform that we built, and the GitHub and all the contracts that we've open sourced and all that stuff. So those are probably the two best entry points, is rad.live and radnftv on Twitter. And yeah, that'll pretty much get you to everything else. And then we as a team, we have, if we're about to launch the whole self-service platform. It's in kind of beta testing. So if you want to be a beta tester or, get actual access to NFT minting or putting things behind NFT gates or streaming on the platform, we're onboarding content constantly, even right now, and launching new things on the platform there. So it's you can just email content@rad.live, and our team will get you into the flow and start getting content on the platform now. We have a bunch of launch announcements and a pretty big partnership that we're announcing soon. So, we'd like to have as many partners as we can on the platform as everything's launching, so we can include those partners, the content partners, in the announcements that we have going out. So so hit us up at content@rad.live. Check out the website, rad.live. New website is about to drop. New minting platform is about to drop, really kind of over the next 3 to 4 weeks. And then our Twitter, radnftv. That's it.
Tony, thank you so much for being on the show and speaking with us about RAD and about Bitcoin, and it's been a great time. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. This is awesome. Just out here trying to build cool shit with people we like. So,
well, everybody, that's the last show of the season. Big shout out to Tony and Rad TV. Make sure to check them out at rad.live. So check them out and start watching Rad. A lot of great shows on there, including the Untold Croaks. And my boy Mobius Strip is on there with the Fuckles animated series. Let's go, Brobius. But everybody, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to have all the guests on for this first season. Throughout November, we're going to be replaying some of the shows, streaming them live on Twitter and other platforms. So be sure to check that out. And we're taking over Saturdays. It's going to be Saturday Tune Saturday. It's a mouthful, but it's going to be tuneful. And I'm looking forward to it. I got some very special things that I'm going to be sharing here soon. A very special co-host. It's going to be toadrific, to say the least. But everybody, thank you so much. I can't wait to see you all back in December. Big shout out to Pablo Knight with his NFT vote off. If you want your NFT to be in his vote off, go check out pabloknight.com or go to @PabloKnight10 on Twitter and check out how to get your NFT signed up for the November's NFT vote off with Pablo Knight. Remember to stay focused and stay positive. Have a good night. Much toad love, my friends.